Well, hello friends, and welcome to another Ask Zach. Today we are going to talk about Frank Reckard. We're going to give a little history, a little bit of a lesson. I'm going to show you how to play that intro to the song Restless, the old Carl Perkins tune that Emmy recorded on her live album called Last Date. And really cool lick. And what a great player. Even though Frank played in Emmy's hot band for 12 years, from 78 to 90, he's somewhat forgotten because, well, part of it is that, you know, it's tough following James Burton and Albert Lee. It just is. Let's just put it out there. And then also he left the music business in 1990, went back to school and became a lawyer, and has been practicing law in the Santa Fe, New Mexico area since the mid-90s. And he still plays, and at times he'll still get out and, you know, play with Emmy whenever she comes through town. He'll sit in some and such. And, yeah, great player, great tone, and, yeah, I just wanted to spotlight him. All right, so while you're thinking about it, if you've been enjoying the show and you haven't subscribed yet, well, please go down in the corner and hit subscribe. If you've already subscribed and you've been enjoying the show, then please support the show because that's what keeps it going. So you can go down in the description and there's tip jar information at askzach.com. There's a merch like this t-shirt. We also have mugs and other doodads. And also there's Friends of Ask Zach, which is a way to support me on a monthly basis. And I am super appreciative of the guys that have done that. So thank you. All right. Frank Reckard. So born in Southern California, and you know, was not of large stature, and I say that only because in an interview he stated that the fact that he did not have big hands kind of helped his technique, in that he didn't have that bad habit of wrapping his thumb over the top of the neck. And, you know, so he always had his thumb behind the neck and used all of his fingers. You know, a lot of us guitar players don't use the pinky much. Well, he had to. And he was, you know, learned classical guitar and jazz guitar, and also, you know, was kind of playing country music, and just kind of became more and more versed and well-known gigging in that area, to the point of getting an audition with Bob Dylan. And this was going to be his kind of Vegas show band. I think that was around 78 or so. And he ended up not getting the gig, but then he ended up auditioning for Emmylou Harris and got the gig in the hot band. And just to give you a little bit of background, of course, the first guitar player in the hot band was James Burton. And James Burton was there because he had played on the Graham Parsons stuff, that where Emmy was the duet vocalist with Graham. Then when Emmy got her deal with Warner Reprise, she used some of those same guys that played on the Graham sessions. And then when she went out on the road, she wanted to have a hot band, and she took out a loan so that she could pay James Burton to tour with her. Of course, James's main gig was playing with Elvis, and they would book Emmy's tour around Elvis's schedule so that she could have James Burton. That's how important having James. Now, also Glenn D. Hardin was also in Elvis's band at the time, so I guess it was around his schedule too. And Emery Gordy, who was a bass player, he had played with Elvis but wasn't with Elvis at the time. So that all went fine until Elvis added some dates that conflicted with Emmylou dates, and Bob Warford filled in some. Of course, Bob Warford was the second, you know, I guess the second B-Bender guy. He was one of Clarence White's buddies, and if you want to find out about him and his guitar, there's an article on AskZach.com, including the blueprints to his B-Bender guitar, which is like the second guitar with a B-Bender. But then and Albert Lee filled in some, and then James said he couldn't come back. He had to leave Emmylou, and so that's when Albert came in. And Albert was just kind of supposed to be a temporary thing, because Albert had a solo deal with A&M Records and was supposed to be making a solo album. Well, of course, he stopped making the solo record and was working with Emmylou for a while. And then A&M kind of said, hey, you need to finish this record. You need to turn it in. So he finished the record with the Hot Band, and the album was called Hiding. And it's a fantastic album. Some of the tracks were recorded pre-Hot Band, and then some of them are with the Hot Band. Of course, the standout track is his version of Country Boy, which is, of course, he had recorded it with Head, Hands, and Feet. But then this version with the Hot Band was just ridiculously good, and it's kind of the blueprint by which Ricky Skaggs went by when he recorded his version. And it's a ridiculously good version of Country Boy. All right, so there you have Albert Lee leaving the Hot Band, supposedly to support a solo record. But then not long after that, he gets offered the gig with Eric Clapton. And instead of riding in a van trying to, break out as a solo artist, he continues to be a sideman, with Clapton. And he has featured some. He's not just playing rhythm guitar for Eric. But anyway, so that's kind of what was happening. And then Frank auditions and gets the gig with the Hot Band. And kind of unenviable in that it's tough following James Burton and Albert Lee. Though I think Frank did an amazing job. I think also Amy's career had changed some too, and some of her, she wasn't new anymore. So so he played with her all through the late 70s and 80s. Also did some other sessions like for Rodney Crowell and Roseanne Cash, and just played great guitar. One of the unique things about him was he didn't play a Telecaster. He played a double cutaway Les Paul TV, and it had a B-Bender on it. His B-Bender was a Sully steel, and so it was this system of cranks and such that were on the back of the guitar, and of course it had a hub behind the wraparound tailpiece, and that's what he used with Emmylou. And he sounded phenomenal. That Les Paul TV guitar with a B-Bender on it and a single P90 just sounded so fat. Also, he used much bigger strings than Albert and James Burton. They were using kind of 8s or 9s, and he used 10s. And in fact, the 10s that he used were Diodario half wound. So the low strings were kind of halfway in between flat wounds and round wounds. And he just got a big fat sound. So let me kind of pull some of the albums. So this is Evangeline, and this is a kind of an odd album. It's a bunch of like leftover tracks from the failed trio album. They Amy and Linda Ronstadt and Dolly tried to cut a trio album in the 70s, and they weren't happy with it, and so they shelved it. And the tracks all ended up being released on their different solo records. And so Evangeline has some of that. It has Mr. Sandman, and it has them doing Evangeline and such. But as far as Frank Reckard, he does a really good job on I Don't Have to Crawl, and then also on Bad Moon Rising. Then you have Cimarron, which Frank is all over this one. And his kind of showcase, tune off of this would be Born to Run, and a Paul Kennerly tune. And he and Steve Fischel trade off. Steve Fischel's playing Weisenborn, and Frank's, of course, playing the Les Paul TV. This is the album for Frank. This is Last Date, which is Emmylou's live album that she released in '82, and it's fantastic. This was kind of the Hot Band Mark II. All of the original guys were gone except for John Ware, the drummer. But this was a great band, and Restless, which I played, of course, the intro at the beginning of the tune. That's kind of Frank's tune, just like James Burton had Ooh Las Vegas, that was his kind of signature tune with Emmy. And Albert Lee had Luxury Liner. Well, Frank had Restless, and he really did a fantastic job on that. And this is the one to hear. Of course, I'm going to create a Spotify playlist, and the link will be in the description. So this is fantastic. This is and one of the funny things, I guess we'll talk a little bit about gear. So on the back of the album, you can see his pedal board, which was quite sizable, and how that happened was that Frank would add a piece as it was needed, as it was used by either he or James or Albert on some track. He would keep, and so stuff kept getting added to his board, not out of wanting to have a big pedal board, but he was just trying to faithfully reproduce the sounds that were on the album. So he ended up with, let's see here, he ended up with an Edwards volume pedal that had a light beam volume pedal. He had a MXR Phase 90. He had an Ibanez analog delay, a Mutron biphase, which was because of the track I don't have to crawl, which is a Rodney Crowell tune, and that's on the Evangeline album. And if you hear that track, you can hear the heavy phase on there. And then a Mutron octave divider because of Rose of Cimarron, which sounds like it's electric guitar and Fender Bass 6 playing together, but he would use that to reproduce it live. And he used a Silverface Twin with JBLs, and again, he used those 10 through 46 half-wound D'Addarios and used a Herco heavy pick. And that was kind of his gear. His Les Paul with the Bender got stolen, and then much later, I think it got returned. He ended up playing an Ernie Ball Silhouette later on that had a Glaser B-Bender on it. And then, of course, in 90, Emmylou disbanded the Hot Band. It had kind of run its course, and she was kind of being ignored by country radio by that point. So she disbanded the group. I think she was also having vocal trouble and having a hard time overcoming the loud Hot Band, which they were a pretty loud, forceful unit, always was. And then she ended up forming the Nash Ramblers, which was kind of her bluegrass group that had Sam Bush and Al Perkins and John Randall and others in it. That was a great, great band, Roy Husky Jr. So Frank was kind of left with, do I go find a gig with somebody else? It's like, who's he going to go play with? I mean, he's already played with Emmylou Harris, and Emmy's kind of shut down the Hot Band. It's like, what are you going to do? So he decided to go back to school, and first he got his degree, and then he went to law school, and he started practicing law. So by the mid-90s, he was practicing law in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and I've heard various stories, whether it was water rights or Native American. I'm not exactly sure, but he's been practicing law in the Santa Fe area since the mid-90s. And like I said before, he'll still go out and sit in with Emmylou when she's in town. And then, of course, he's still done some other playing and some custom projects. Yeah, what a great player. I think one of the things about him, and this was told to me by Mike Bowden, who was the bass player in the Hot Band throughout the 80s. He replaced Emery Gordy. He told me just how versatile Frank was and is, just how he was more versatile than Albert Lee or James Burton, that those guys were kind of stylists, but Frank was more of an all-around guitar player, being able to play classical or blues or jazz standards and such. And then Steve Fischel, who was the steel player in the Hot Band, also echoed that Frank was a great player. I did get to see Frank play with the Hot Band in the 90s. They did a kind of a reunion show for the Mangler. So the Mangler was Emmylou's road manager, and he had cancer, and they did a benefit show for him, and it was called Mangler Dash. And it was held at the Ryman, and I went and saw the show, and so they had Steve Fischel and some of the kind of 70s and a mixture of 70s and 80s Hot Band guys came out and played, and Frank was there, and he had his Music Man Silhouette guitar, blue one with the Glaser Bender, and he played fantastic guitar. And Steve Fischel kind of joked about it afterwards, in that he felt like Frank had to prove that he could still play, and he certainly could. He played fantastic, and it was a great show. All right, well, let's do a little lesson on the what I played at the beginning, which was, of course, the tune "Restless," which is a Carl Perkins song, and I love the way they did the intro, because the way they did it was the song's in the key of E, but the intro starts in A, and then it goes to the E chord, and then it goes to F sharp major, which is the 2, and then it goes to the 5, which is B, and then back to the 1, E. And so when you hear the song, you're kind of left wondering, okay, what key is this song in? And it isn't until you get the 2, 5, 1 that you kind of realize, oh, we're in the key of E. And Frank plays a really cool, part, and I really like what he played over the E chord, because he starts off in A doing this. Normal kind of sixth thing. Then he plays this, which is basically it's an E7 chord. Then he plays this hard to play 16th note thing where he's playing over the 2, 5, and getting back to the 1. And so you have this F sharp. Then you go back to E, and you get this really cool descending lick. And again, slower. So really neat, descending lick, and really great intro, really great arrangement. Again, starting on the 4 chord, going back to the 1 and the 2, the 5, and that 16th note thing's hard to play. So yeah, please listen to the the Spotify playlist and really kind of get a real kind of take in what Frank Reckard was doing. And he played on like Driving Wheel off the White Shoes album, and there's Mystery Train off 13. He played all sorts of great guitar solos, and such a great player. So just a little spotlight on him, and I hope you've enjoyed it, our mini lesson. And again, I want to thank everyone that has supported me through Friends of Ask Zach, through the tip jar, through buying merch. I'm really appreciative. All right, guys, we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.